The base is a house with Ani eating his bread and salt, Cohen standing on his head saying Kriya Shema. The Gimel is 3 camels in a ruin. The first carrying lion, the Dove, the second carrying Eliyahu Navi, and the third carrying David Melech. Dove Dalit is Delit, the door spanning the neighborhood to. We should close the windows of the AC. To the kotel, stand on which David Melech is standing, dancing in his chassid outfit. Hay is a haystack. V'yochanan is St. Krishna Gita, hoping to stave away suffering and boogeyman, but it's not working. He's suffering terribly. And the Vav, which we just had now, is, don't forget this one, Reb Zera running with a stick. Stick, Vav is a stick. Reb Zera running with a stick, trying to chase away Mazikin who are behind the shul in search of Hashem's tefillin, because they heard that's where Hashem is to be found. So there's a lot to that on it. But if you look at the little chart there, you have it lying around there?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I added a little like a super concise halachic sikkum there also. So you should get that in your email. I sent this one by 8 o'clock. Summing up, kind of mine. Kedai. I hope you can read it. There has been a volunteer who I will not name yet, but he's sitting behind me, who said if I get him the software, he will try to type it, see if he can type it up, so it's easier to read. So Bez Hashem. Okay, good. So it brings us to Daf Zayin. Daf Zayin, we started yesterday at the very first word in the Amud. We had a statement which, best I can tell, is a non sequitur, unless you say, which I do want to say. Well, I guess 2 possibilities. We said, how do you know Hashem davens? Either it's just, we mentioned like a daf ago, how do you know Hashem wears tefillin, and we just like are bringing that up now, which I find kind of hard to believe. Alternatively, I just think maybe it's true, but conceptually we're transitioning from daf vav, which was sort of seeing where Hashem is in the world and where He's to be found, with daf zayin's topic, which is Hanhagas Hashem, how Hashem relates to the world. I really, truly believe that is what's going on here, even though it sounds like a stretch. You'll see consistently throughout the daf when we talk about how Hashem's hanhaga with the world, how it relates to the world. So therefore, the first thing you can see is that the world's a place where Hashem davens. Hashem has a tefillah. He has a big tefillah seat, the house of His prayer, my prayer, Hashem's prayer, His prayer. And we talk about Hashem's prayer, which is that He prays that His midas harachamim, His mercy, should overwhelm His other midos. We had 2 basic we had the question, what is this supposed to mean? Hashem prays. Either we said, yeah, you're right. Hashem, who would He pray to? That's ridiculous. It's teaching us what prayer is about and how we ought to pray and what Hashem wants us to do tshuva, so He'll be able to treat us mercifully, etc. But the approach a little more literal is that on some level, to say Hashem does anything is always, what is that supposed to mean? So here too, whatever that's supposed to mean, Hashem does pray. I suggested perhaps this suggests a conflict between like his 2. He wants, like there's in the very beginning of Bereshit, says Rashi, that brings very very beginning. He says Hashem wanted to create the world because it says Hashem and Elohim the same pasuk. Hashem wanted to make the world with din, but He saw it couldn't stand, so then He worked in Rachamim. So you see, what is that supposed to mean? Hashem wanted but couldn't do it. Like Hashem knew what would happen. He saw couldn't stand it. It should seem like only make that make sense. So however that makes sense over there, you see Hashem is somehow conflicted out between His desire for the world to be a world of justice, because that's really the best thing for us. On the other hand, in a practical sense, it's not going to work, and therefore He sort of has to temper it. So here too, the same kind of thing. There's a conflict going on that Hashem wishes that people would be tzaddikim and not He would and earn their keep and be able to have reward and stand on their feet in Shemayim as having built themselves. But because that's what Hashem wants. We actually saw in the previous Amud, like that's what the world's all about. It's like Kol Ha'adam, that people should be Yirei Hashem and Shomer Mitzvot. But people are up for the task necessarily, and therefore Hashem has to somehow He has to mix it rachamim, which is so that conflict is happening. I suggest maybe like the Ben Ish Chai suggests in Ben Yoyada that this was his chiddush, but I like it very much. That because Hashem knows like present and future, there's a conflict. There's 2 yous He's looking at, so to speak. There's the you as you are now, and the you as you know you are to become, and He, so to speak, can't do what I call insider trading, and an act on the future which hasn't happened yet. There's a conflict there. Whatever it is, very mysterious Gemara. Which only becomes more mysterious when you say that the story of Yishmael and Elisha, the Kohen Gadol, went in and Hashem appeared to him and with this fancy name. And I told you some sofer says it's the name of Malach, but probably not his name, but Katri El Ka Hashem Tzvakot, and requested a bracha from Hashem. From Yishmael and Elisha, and he gave him the bracha, which is Hashem's prayer. Mighty strange Gemara. Again, to me, it's not so strange in the context of we're trying to speak out Hashem's Anagas. Therefore, you see, Hashem cares what we do. You should take a bigger head to Kalvin and this Shemos Hashem, or Kabbalistic indications of how Hashem runs the world. So fine. In any case, that's what we're up to in this story here. So now we're going to get further into the topic of how Hashem runs His world and the Hagas Hashem. Okay, so we're holding on Dav Zayin. I'm an Aleph. I didn't know my lines in, unfortunately. So we're holding, there's two dots. So there's the second of the medium lines, and it's after two dots. It says Va'am Rav Yochanan Mishum Rav Yossi. So this is the second statement of Rav Yochanan Mishum Rav Yossi. Minayin, from where do we know in the text, She'ein Maratzim Lo La'adam B'Sha'as Kaso, that you shouldn't try to appease a person when he is boiling up in anger. So it's not appropriate to chesiv, because the pasuk says, this is Hashem talking to Moshe, and he says, Panai Yelchu, like literally my face will go, whatever that's supposed to mean, V'chanichosi lach, and then either I'll be appeased for you or I'll let you go, I'll give you rest. There's different interpretations based on the context here. But in any case, you see Hashem says, my face has to go, my countenance has to change, and then it'll be time for consolation or appeasement. So you see, Amar Lo Kadosh Baruch Hu, we're darshan a pasuk by saying to Moshe, and Hashem said to Moshe, Hamten li, you gotta wait for me. Ad shi'avoru panim shel za'am. Wait until my panim, my face, so the pasuk said panai, what's Hashem's face going, where's it going? He means his angry face, his panim shel za'am, his countenance of anger. Again, the face is, the word panim is like the word panim means inside, right? So when a person's panim is that which reflects his person's face, that which reflects his inner world. So something like that's happening with Hashem, that Hashem is in anger mode, and his anger mode face that he presents the world has to pass before it's time for appeasement. So at that point, va'aniach lach, and at that point I'll give you rest. So there, v'anichosim, I'll give you rest, the conscious in this context here. Period. So that's the story. So just here, the proposition was, it's not proper to try to appease a person when he's angry. Wait till his anger passes, and then you told him, how do you know that? Because Hashem himself told Moshe, now's not the time, wait till my moment of anger passes, and then we could talk about, reconciliation, appeasement. So that's the story. Now, and I guess the Kol V'chomer be if Hashem himself needs time to get over his anger, so then for sure other people. Interestingly, we'll see this mem will come up again in not long, but I'll remind you next week when you see it. But in any case, that's the story so far. So now, the Gemara is worried about a different thing, which is the nature of Hashem's anger. So the Gemara asks a question which I think is a little misleading, if you ask me, because the Gemara says, Umi ika ritcha kamedikut shabrichu, which means, is there really anger before Hashem? Probably was how to translate that. Now, that's a funny question. Ritcha, I think, my Aramaic is good enough to know for sure, but I think ritcha is like the same word as to boil, like boiling anger, right? Is there such thing? Does Hashem really get angry? I think is idiomatic what it means. Now that's a strange question, because there are many psukim that says like yichar ba'atmav, like Hashem gets angry all the time. So, like what kind of question is that? The answer is, to whatever extent we're ascribing anthropomorphisms to Hashem, so then the psukim do it already. So what's the big surprise here in the Gemara? So it must be the pshat is that we're talking about a specific hanhaga of Hashem. I'm harping that point again. And the question is, does Hashem really have like a specific moment in time where he's like designates for his anger moment? That's the question. Like, in other words, in the Hanhagas Hashem, the way Hashem runs the world, is there really a designated moment, let's say every day, this will come out in a moment, that Hashem is angry, question mark? Because that's what's going on with Hashem, so then reinterpreting with that understanding of the previous discussion, Hashem says to Moshe, wait a second, there's a moment of anger that I express every day, and let's let that moment pass before we get into this topic, because otherwise, who knows what could happen. And like so it's on the schedule, on Hashem's calendar of things to do, so to speak, every day, and his Hanhaga is the moment of anger. Now, I think you have to say more than that, just a kasha. 1 second. If the moment of anger, well, hold on a second. We'll get there in a second. So that's the Gemara. When the Gemara asks, is there really anger before Hashem? I think what it must be understood, this isn't really my Chiddush, I'll just say it, is, but I think there's no other way to understand it, is that, is there really like a fixed time every day? Is there really a Hanhaga, like there's a fixed moment of anger that like is part of the schedule, and therefore Hashem, has to say, wait for it to pass? So the Gemara says, there actually is, yes. The Tanya, as it says in a Brisa, the Pasuk says, V'kel zo'en b'chol yom. God gets angry every day. So that already tells you right away that it's actually a daily activity of Hashem. It's on his schedule of things to do, so to speak, the moments of anger in the day. And therefore, Moshe was told, wait, the moment's still coming, presumably, so wait for it to pass. V'kamo zamo, and how much is that anger? How long is that moment that he's angry every day? A rega, just a rega, just a moment. V'kamo rega, well, how long exactly is a rega? So the Gemara answers, Echad mechameshus ribo ushmonas alafim ushmona meos ushmona b'shah, which means 1 over 58,888 of an hour. There are other.
That's not rega today.
So yeah, Mani Rega of course is a second, but they didn't have in those days. They didn't have any reasonable way to measure seconds directly. They didn't. I mean, maybe they had a way, but they didn't.
It's a guzman, no?
No, I don't think it's a guzman. Now, I don't think it's a guzman.
It's a fraction of a second.
It's a fraction of a second. If you do the math, it comes out to being 1/16th of a second.
It takes longer than that to say, wait until my anger.
Right, now, so now, the question, however long a rega is, if Hashem had to say, wait till my anger passes, that's like long gone. That's why I think you have to say in addition, not just that Hashem was saying to Moshe, not just that, like now is the moment, so you better wait, because by the time he said now is the moment, you better wait, the moment will pass.
Yes.
But rather that there's, and I think you'll see this, I will try to prove to you, the pshat here is that there's an element of, from our perspective, randomness here. That there's a moment in the morning, you'll see it comes out in the morning, that like there's an unpredictable moment where like a Hanhaga of Hashem is a moment of anger.
0.02 seconds.
0.02 seconds.
Is that right?
I think it's a little longer than that, but anyways, but not much longer, a little longer. Anyways, I think that's like a 50th of a second. I think it's like a 16th of a second. But in any case, whatever it is.
Was it 3,600?
5,888
The 3,600 seconds
in an hour.
divided by that number.
3,600 seconds in an hour divided by 5.
58,888.
Yeah, well, you get 2.
I have 0.022.
Seems so small to me. But anyways, what difference does it make? Nothing.
It's like the
It's a split second.
Yeah, it's a split second. Sorry.
Split.
Now you're splitting seconds.
No, it's 0.061133. Okay. Anyways, it doesn't matter. So it really doesn't matter. Now, as it happens, there actually is a Girsa issue here, and there are other sources that say that the hour can be divided into 24 subsections, and the rega is the 24th of the 24th of the 24th. That being the case, it comes out to 13,000 and change, 13,000th of a second. I'm sorry, 13,000th of an hour, excuse me. And that's about a quarter of a second, which is actually much more reasonable, as you'll see in a moment. But anyways, hold up. Whether it's a fraction or a little fraction, a big fraction of a second, it's a fraction of a second. So, on your question, the most fundamental question, which is, like, what kind of dialogue is listening Moshe and Hashem? Like, what does it mean? Hashem says, wait, the moment of anger has to pass first. Well, that is a lot longer than a fraction of a second. So I think what you have to say is that it was upcoming, it hadn't happened yet. So either if you want to be, like, not reach out as much as I'm reaching out in terms of my explanation here about the randomness, you'd have to say that, well, Hashem is anticipating it's coming up in 5 minutes, somewhat, and if we get in the conversation now, we'll be in the middle of things right when the moment happens, something like that, right? That's one answer. But I think there's something more fundamental here, that it's the nature of what Hanagas Hashem is, that he's a moment of anger where he expresses whatever he expresses, and that is, from our perspective, it is random, like it's unpredictable, and it introduces the notion of randomness into the world. Even I would go as far as to say, you'll see more as we get into it why I'm saying that. But either way, on the question of what's the meaning of the relationship, the meaning of the conversation between Hashem and Moshe, what you have to say is it hasn't happened yet, but that it's happening now. Otherwise, it's impossible. And as far as the actual amount of time,
I don't understand what you're talking about, randomness.
well, you'll see more. I'm saying that the moment this moment of anger happens sometime in the morning, as we'll see in the morning. But when in the morning is unpredictable.
I see.
It could happen at any minute, but it may not happen for a few minutes.
Maybe that's in God's terms, like if we say that one day in God's terms is
I'm
about
not
1,000 years, so then it would be a reasonable amount of time.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think it's that.
No?
No, I think we're saying that it's a very short amount of time. You'll see more in a moment. We'll talk about the length of Rega more in a moment. There's more to talk about there. But in terms of just the making sense of the words of the Gemara, however short or long a Rega is, it only makes sense if you say the Rega hasn't happened yet. The Rega of anger is still to come, and I'm suggesting it's unpredictable, so to speak.
It's not a set time every
Not a set time every day. It's an unpredictable time. I'll show you why you have to set it. When the Gemara goes on, you'll see more about it. You'll see why I'm saying it. In any case, so the Gemara says, is there anger in front of Hashem? So that means, is there a set moment in the day when he gets angry? The Gemara says yes. The pasuk says, Kel Zoem B'chol Yom. Hashem gets angry every day. So you see it's on Hagav Hashem being angry every day. So then we said, how long is it? Kama Za'amo. It's a Rega. How long is a Rega? 58,000th of a second, 58,000th of an hour, or 16th of a second, or something like that. Okay, fine. So the Gemara, we're in the middle of a Brisa here, the Titania, and the Brisa continues on. You should know that there's the Rega moment, which is the 58,000th of an hour. The Ein Kol Beria Yichola L'Chaven Osa Shah. Like no one can know when it is. It's like inscrutable to know when that moment is. Chutz Bilam HaRasha, except for one guy. Bilam HaRasha, he had a special talent. He could know when Hashem's moment of anger is, and that was the whole chap there. The chap was he was going to curse the Jews because he knew that moment. Okay. Dichsiv, how do you see in a pasuk that Bilam HaRasha knew the special thing? Because the pasuk says Dichsiv Bey. It says about him, V'yodea da'as elyon. He knew this is hard to translate. I'll translate it as the mind of. It means he knew the mind of Hashem. Das is a technical term. It's called mind for now. Elyon means of like the one above, something like that. How do they translate in English? Supreme one. Okay, yeah, good, fine. But they mind though. How do they say it? How do they translate das? Mind. Oh, so I was thinking, okay, good, fine, yeah, fine. Perfect. He knows the mind of the Supreme One. Good, great. Fine. So Bilam knew something special. He knew Hashem's das, meaning he knew that the moment that Hashem would express this za'ama, this anger, this kaas. So the Gemara says, come on. Hashta das behem tuli haviyada. Bilam didn't even know the mind of his own animal, right? So das elyon haviyada, come on. You think you really knew what Hashem was up to? Now, I have to confess, I think there's something here I don't understand. I'll tell you what it is. Hashta now. But like now then. Come, that's introduction for come on. Like wait a second. Now that you're saying like hashta, now okay, so I would have thought the Pshat in the Gemara is that when Bilam went on his donkey, the donkey was like freaking out, I'm not going, and he was hitting it, and I don't know why, and there was a malach, he couldn't figure it out, he didn't know. That's the story, right? That's in the Psukim. So I would think he didn't know the das of the donkey means he didn't know that he couldn't figure out what the donkey was looking at a malach, and he was scared. But for some reason which I do not understand, I really don't understand why. Rashi doesn't say that. Rashi figures no matter how well you learn the Chumash, better than I learned it obviously, then you wouldn't be able to understand this phrase that Bilam didn't know das elyon. And to understand what that means, das of behemto, of example, you would have to go on to what Rashi cites here in the very second Rashi moment here, the Mesechta Avodah Zarah, Ein Aleph is Avodah Lilim, but our Mesechta Avodah Zarah, Mefarish La and Parakam. The first chapter of Mesechta Brachot, there is a story about Bilam, and there you'll see what it means. He did know the das of his behemoth. I don't know why Rashi has come on to that. And Rashi is saying, I don't know what the story is, but in any case, over there's the story more fleshed out. That's the Gemara famously says that Bilam was like sleeping with his donkey and so on. Everyone's heard that story. It comes from the Gemara. And I guess they had this interchange where the donkey essentially like embarrassed him by saying that in front of the people, and like he didn't see it coming. So the fact he didn't see it coming, he did know the das of his behemoth.
That comes from the Sanhedrin, yeah?
Sanhedrin. Why is it Sanhedrin?
It says Sanhedrin 1:4.
Oh, it says it right over there, too, yeah.
Is it both Sanhedrin and also Vodazara?
What is our?
Vodazara.
Oh, okay, fine, yeah, okay, fine. So there must be two Gemaras.
And then Yaakov.
Then Yaakov is collected. Rashi just brings a Vodazara. Maybe it's, I don't know. I don't know if it's a mistake of Rashi. I don't think it's a mistake of Rashi. Maybe there's two Gemaras twice, they're different. I didn't look. I don't know. Good. So I don't know exactly, but that's the story. The story, as Rashi sees it, is that he couldn't outsmart his donkey in that conversation, so he couldn't outsmart. He had to like be smart enough to know, like outsmart Hashem and know when Hashem's going to have his, foresee Hashem's moments of anger. That's the Gemara's caution. So Ella. So the Gemara answers Ella. We discard what was before. We say Malamed Shayodeh Lechaven Oso Sham Shekadosh Baruch Hu Kovas Ba. So the which means rather he knew how to like identify the moment that Hashem got angry. So in other words, what we're saying is he actually didn't know, he didn't like have like the spiritual sensitivity or something like that he can like feel, this is Hashem's anger moment. No, that he knew a trick how to discover it, something like that. We'll see the trick in a minute, but the point is he had figured out somehow the trick. I think I'll tell you, the trick is going to be that the comb of the rooster turns white. Okay, we'll get there in a moment. The point is, he figured that one out. Like, he was the one who figured out that, like, I guess he figured out that the moment of Hashem's anger was the same moment the chicken's comb turns white. He was like, so now I have my secret nuclear weapon, the chicken detector, and that chicken detector uses it to figure out when to curse people. Something
Sounds
like that.
reasonable.
Right? Yeah. So just because why I'm saying that is because the Gemara is a little strange. Without that, the Gemara reads, it says, because he knew how he didn't know anything, couldn't even figure out his animal. So it says, you're right, he didn't know, he just knew. So I'm trying to define what did he know? He didn't know how to feel it, kilo, but he didn't know how to detect it with a Hashem Zam detector, which he had. Something like that. He developed the Zam detector. Okay, fine. Behind the Damar Lahu, Navi, this you should know this is really parenthetical. It's in the Brisa, but you should know that's what the Navi, this is the Navi Micha, meant when he said to Yisrael. He said, Ami, my nation, Zechorna, please recall my Yatz Balak, what Balak had planned to do. Remember, Balak sort of hired Bilam to do the cursing. What Balak planned to do, Melech Moav, V'gomer, V'gomer means you have to finish the pasuk to know what we're talking about. So the rest of the pasuk reads, Ami Zechorna ma Yatz Balak Melech Moav, Uma Ana Lapoto, and what was the answer to him? Bilam ben Beor, Min Hashitim, Adi Gilgal, in that time and place. Lama Das Tzidkos Hashem. So you should be mindful of Hashem's righteousness. So you see, Hashem did something special for the Jews in that period of time. What was it? So what is it? So now the Gemara asks, Ma Lama Das Tzidkos Hashem. What are you supposed to be mindful of in terms of Hashem's righteousness? Hashem's like kindness to us. Amar Belazar, Amar Lam Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. This is Hashem saying to the Jewish people through Micha, the Navi, De'u, you should know, Kama Tzidkos Asisi Yamachem. You should know like what a good thing I did for you. It's hard to translate the word Tzidkos, right? Shalo Ka'asi, that despite, these are my words now, despite the fact that in my regular daily schedule I get angry every day and like have a moment of anger, and I guess that's needed for I don't know how this person to run the world appropriately. Perhaps Joel Padowitz speculates that's what allows the world to have its element of ostensible randomness, that you don't see exact cause and effects, which allows Hashem to hide, right? So that's the moment where Hashem gets to conceal himself. But anyways, throughout the period of the Bilam Balak episode, Hashem never let such a moment happen. He canceled his anger, appointments every day. Shelo ka'asti b'mei Bilam Arasha, so that way Bilam could never ride in the coattails of that moment and blast the Jews.
Why wouldn't he do it for Moshe?
Why? I'm sorry, what?
Why wouldn't he do it for Moshe? Why does Moshe have to wait for Bilam?
Because Hashem wasn't going to change it. He didn't want to. That's not Haga. Wait. Hashem needs it for his plan of how to run the world. But Shel Malik Asti, because if I would have had a moment of anger during that period, and then I guess meaning that Bilam could have, harnessed that moment. Lo nishtayer b'soneim shel Yisrael sridu palit. Lo nishtayer would not remain b'soneim shel Yisrael from the enemies of Israel. But every time the Gemara says soneim shel Yisrael, the enemies of Israel, it means the Jewish people. Just it doesn't want to say it because it's not nice. So we're going to say the Jewish people would have not had a remnant, sridu palit, like no one would have survived. We don't want to say the Jewish people wouldn't have survived, so we say the enemies of the Jewish people wouldn't survive, but it's just what the Gemara calls Lashon Sagi Nohar, which means euphemism. Sagi Nohar means plenty light, because when a blind person is called a Sagi Nohar, we don't call him blind, we call him,
Like Birkas Hashem.
lit up. Like what?
Like Birkas Hashem.
Like Birkas Hashem, right, exactly, for a curse. Exactly. So, in any case, so the point Hashem is saying, look at the tzidkos I did for you, that's what Hashem is conveying via Micha, that I need this recipe of, to make my world work the way it ought to work. I need to have this moment of za'am every day, moment of anger, and I didn't let it happen the whole time so that I could stymie, Bilam's efforts, and you wouldn't be cursed, because if I didn't do that, you guys would have been goners. V'hanu kamarle Bilam, that's what Bilam meant when he said to Balak, Ma ikov v'lo kabakel, I can't, how do you want me to curse them if Hashem's not open to cursing? Uma ezom v'lo za'am Hashem. Like how can I effect anger if Hashem is not getting angry? End quote. So you understand that's what when the conversation happening there. It's Bilam saying I need. I'm not a magician. It's not magic. I ride on the Hagas Hashem, and I can, when you were kids and you took the magnifying glass and you roasted the. I'm sure you did, but you roast the ants by focusing it. And my kid actually came back from a school trip last week. He told me that down in the Dead Sea they have a parabolic oven, a big mirror like that, and they catches the sunlight and reflects a single point. And you cook your soup on the middle of the oven that catches the sunlight. So it's, so to speak, something like that. That you have this moment where Hashem has got angry. You're harnessing that moment to blast the Jews. That was his plan. So, just finishing up this thought, then we'll go back to the Rega mathematics and so on. So that's the end of the Baraisa, the word Za'am. So the Gemara says, Kama Za'amo, how much is Hashem's anger? Now, just remember, Kama Za'amo, we asked that very question a moment ago, at the beginning of the Baraisa. And the Gemara answers Rega, as the Baraisa answered. Kama Rega, you know what is a Rega? The Gemara asked that question in the Baraisa also, but here there's a different answer. Amr of Avin, the Tev Rabbi Avina, a Rega is commemorate. The amount of a Rega is the amount of time it takes to say Rega, like 2 syllables. Now the problem begins, because if you have to say 2 syllables, so that one word, let's call it, for a second. So it's very difficult to imagine a person could say one word in the 158,000th of an hour, 16th of a second, because you can't squeeze out 16 words per second, obviously. So therefore, you've got a problem. So there's 2 basic possibilities. Possibility number 1 is it's machlokas. And the first sheet in the Brisa was saying it's 58,000, and this sheet over here is saying no, it's not 58,000. It's not a time it takes to say the word rega. That would solve the problem. The other possibility, if you want to know what machlokas is, there's another girsa above. There's another girsa for the definition of rega, which puts it at 13,000 approximately. I don't remember that. 24 times 24. 1 13,824 of a second. Thank you. So that comes out to being about a quarter of a second. Quarter of a second, we have 240 quarters of a second in a minute, and you definitely, I'm sure, who speak very fast speak at least 240 words a second. For sure.
How long-
240 words a minute, I should say.
How long does it take to say this?
So in other words, that's reconcilable. I'm sure at the pace which I speak, 2 syllable words come out of my mouth in a quarter of a second. So that being the case, that will reconcile the kasha to use accuracy. Okay? So,
And if you speak very slowly, rega could be long.
yes, well obviously remember means how long it takes a regular person to say the word rega. And rega is not very long. In fact, Lee Netter, we're recording it now. Oh, shoot, did I do this recording? No, it's still recording. So, I'm sure with this basic software in front of me, when I say the word rega. Okay. I'm sorry, I can't help myself. Rega. Wait. I'm not gonna do it right here. Rega. Okay. So anyways, it looks like I say rega a little more than a quarter of a second, so like about a third to a half a second. But anyways, you can play with it yourself. In any case, sorry, mix it fast. Anyways, it's certainly reconcilable if you're talking about it being a quarter of a second without a 16. Okay, that's it. So therefore, what you have to say is that there's this moment in time, but it's a random moment-ish. I think the randomness is why no one else could stand on it. No one else could be omid on the moment, as opposed to you can't. But it's identifiable by this method we haven't seen yet. And when Hashem will speak to Moshe, who's saying it hasn't happened yet, and so to speak, it could happen any moment. I don't think it chas v'shalom doesn't mean that like Hashem didn't know when it's going to happen, and Hashem's out of control. But okay, Hashem, I think, was saying from like, I forget what Hashem knows everything. That's not the point. But from any outside of Hashem's perspective, it's random. It's random. It's an unpredictable moment.
So how does
But it is in the morning.
How long to wait?
He doesn't know. I guess Hashem will let him know. Hashem says, just wait. Now's not the time. It's going to happen still.
But it is in the morning.
We're saying minute is in the morning. It's in the morning. And but it's random, and I think that's why I suspect that's why. There's a famous drasha Vayikra, this week's parsha. What's the little olive? So, because by Bilam it's Vayikar and the lashon keri. Hashem just happened, like to chance upon him, so to speak, and give him the nevuah. That Bilam is Bilam was one who embodied or thrived or lived in the notion of randomness, right? That's what, so like he capitalized on that, and Hashem related to him in that way of Vayikar. There's like Gemara will see, because Hashem sooner or later, that like Bilam's big kasha was like how could Hashem is involved in reproduction of Jewish people, like why would he do that? Like why should he like a million sperm cells to make one baby? Like it seems it's almost that was his big that was his big issue, because it seems like the whole process something so important as that should be like randomized and so on. So I think without getting into that whole philosophical discussion, there's unpredictable moments in the day that's part of Hagas Hashem, that Hashem introduces the random elements into the world, which allows them to hide. Otherwise, the world will be very predictable, and Hashem wouldn't be able to hide away. And perhaps that adds elements to like bad things happen to good people, all that kind of business. Okay. Anyways, so now Tosfos has a question, which is wait one second. Forget the Moshe issue that it hadn't happened yet, but let's say you do know exactly what's going to happen. So what kind of curse is Bilam going to squeeze into a quarter of a second? How's that going to work? Right? So Tosfos has two answers. His first answer is very straightforward. He says the same way that rega is like a 2-syllable word or a 3-letter word, I don't know. He would say kalem. Kalem is a 2-syllable word or a 3-letter word, and it's the same length of time to say. And kalem means like destroy them. So that's what I needed to say. Kalem. He gives a second answer, which might have some heavy-duty implications elsewhere, that like once you've started, once you've tapped into that moment, like you can continue on writing on this kotas even though the moment has passed. That might have, I don't want to discuss this now to be honest, but that could have big implications in terms of, let's say for example, the din of davening with a minyan. So like, or davening mincha time. Let's say, forget that, I'll keep it a simpler case. Let's say davening mincha. Yet, let's say the din is, let's pretend that it is, you have to daven mincha before shkia. It's not really true. But anyway, let's pretend. like a time. So does that mean you have to finish mincha before Shkia? Or does it mean as long as you started, and like once you're in the zone, you're in that time zone? Like, so that could have implications with these two roots, maybe. Okay? Those are quite the first teretz, perhaps you have to be in the zone the whole time, and if mincha's gone. The second teretz, once you're in, you're in. Maybe. And same with the minion and stuff like that. That's like getting speculative. In any case,
Same thing with Shalom Shuvas. You say that you started, or
You say it's there.
You go for hours.
there's a ritzay, okay, so, these could have, both those issues may introduce other elements as well, because things are, but anyways, but indeed, you're opening up, that's the can of worms that is beginning to open with this topic here. It's beyond, Tosfos doesn't speak it out here. Okay, fine. So, now, not quite done yet, the Gemara asks, Umanalan the rega retach.
What line are we?
I don't know. Now the fat lines we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The sixth fat line. I'm sorry, I didn't know my pages. Sorry.
So that's 26.
What?
That would be 26.
26? Oh, great. Oh, thank you. Great. 26. So now, fine. This is a dot there, period. Manalan the rega retach. How do we know there's this moment of anger? Like that the anger is a moment. Shneimar ki rega ba'achol chayim b'ritzono. Like because it's a drasha, but it means because his anger for a minute is it's a drasha. Like if we read the word pasuk literally, it means it's a drasha. Let's take it with that. Ki rega ba'achol. We're darshan that pasuk. That his anger, like a moment of his anger, which implies that there's a moment of his anger. His anger is for a moment a rega. That's it, I think. Biba is saying, a second source to suggest where you see indication that Hashem has a rega of anger. Mahacha, because it says, Chavi kimat rega, like hide for about a rega, ad yavor zam, until the anger passes. So again, you see, you've got about a rega of moments of hiding required before the anger passes, therefore the anger is a moment's rega. The emas retach, and when does the anger happen? Amar Rabbi hanach tla shai kamaisa. It's in the first 3 hours of the day. So again, like that's why I'm seeing here again, like random. We're not saying a particular time. It's in the first 3 hours of the day. Ki chivra karbalta de tarnagola, when the chivra is from to turn white. Karbalta is the comb of the rooster, of the tarnagola, of the rooster. The koi achad kara, and he stands, the rooster koi, that we had that word, for example, tanahecha koi, the opening words of the Bavli, where is the tana standing, what context is he asking the question? Koi, stand. So the tarnagola is standing on 1 foot, achad kara, on 1 foot, and his comb turns white. So the Gemara says, wow, come on, kol shata v'shata nami koi. Like that's always happening. Like it's always standing around on 1 foot with this white thing. So the Gemara says, no, kol shata ispe sruke sumki. No, the rest of the morning, it's on 1 foot. It's got like veins, red lines inside the white comb. Ba'al shata, but in that very instance, less be sruke sumki. There are no red lines in the comb. Yeah. So it says that's what it means. Period. End of discussion. So that really is that's the clock. So that clock, that indicator, the Hashem Zam indicator, that's what Bilam had, and perhaps he innovated that. Perhaps he's the one who discovered that connection. So that's the story. Now, fine. So the work continues on employing that trick. How Tzduki? Once upon a time there was a Tzduki. That Tzduki, I want you to understand, is like the Tzdukim were anti the rabbis and tried to cause them a lot of mischief all the time. They caused problems. So there was a certain Tzduki, Tahava b'Shivusa Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. He was Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi's neighbor, and he Tahava k'mitzar le'tuva. He drove him crazy. The Tzduki drove the rabbi Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi crazy, b'kroi, with verses. I mean, he would all day long stand on the street corner as one of those missionaries telling everyone in town the rabbi says all wrong, and I don't know what, virgin births and who knows what nonsense he was talking about, whatever his issue was. And he would really give for Bishul Levi a really hard time, causing a lot of mischief, and I don't know what, perhaps being machshel the neighbors, I don't know. But anyways, it was an utter misery for Bishul Levi, so he had enough of it. He decided, Yom Echad, one day he said, enough is enough, I'm blasting this guy. Shakal Tarnagola, he took a rooster, he stuck it down by the, tied it to the feet of his bed, and he sat there watching. Savar, he figured, Kimata Haishata, when that moment comes and the veins disappear of the white of the crop, I'm going to blast him. Alatie, I'll curse him. And that's what happens. He's waiting there to nuke the, use Hashem's Hanhaga, like Bilam style, to nuke the Tzduki. Now, Kimata Haishata, you know what happened? The second that, the moment arrived, Nim, he would doze off for a second. Remember, like Nisnam Nim Kasus? So here, he zoned out for a moment, right? And that's it. Like something happened, and he just lost it for the moment, and he was too late. Amar, so he said to himself, the fact that Hashem arranged it, that I would like space out for the moment that it happened. Shma mina, I should learn from this that lav orach ara, that it's not. I'll translate it derech eretz because that's a literal translation of orach ara, but it means it's not proper. Not proper l'meivid hachi. It's not right to do this. In other words, he thought that this guy was bad and worthy of Hashem, of like directing Hashem's anger at him and blasting him, but he now discovered, he took it as a sign. So all those people, by the way, many times you'll hear people talk about you're not allowed to rely on signs, and talk about the Rama passes is the rice of relying on signs. I'm not discussing that topic now. All I'm saying is how that works is not so pashut. And here is an example of where you see a Jew taking some event in his life as a sign from Hashem and changing his mind. This is like a life-death decision, right? He's about to kill a guy now. He decided, I guess that's Hashem's way. The fact that event happened to me tells me that I should change my attack. That's a very big topic, but I'm just saying, on the one hand, it's an Isser D'Oraisa to be superstitious. On the other hand, you see that we're meant to understand Hashem talk to us in our lives, take events that happen to us.
That is the way Hashem talks to us. I mean, you have to look at everything that happens to you as a message and so.
Right, but it's a tricky business. Because on the other hand, if you're superstitious and say, the fact that I dropped this cup this morning that smashed means I shouldn't go to that job interview.
Right, but you have to search yourself to see what is going on here.
Right. Okay. Fine. So I don't know. It's a can of worms that may not have resolution. It might be that maybe different traditions, like within the Jewish world, are more or less open to interpreting signs and being significant.
Is it right to rely on?
At some point, there's a law of the Torah. At some point, there's definitely, certainly, consulting the dead or a Ouija board.
Right. Well,
it's clear. It's clear. There's a Isurim, black and white Isurim.
Right.
There's a separate. The Rambam passes to stop being superstitious and to think. In other words, you're going to shul and then I don't know, you stepped on a crack and you think it's breaking one's back, so you didn't go to shul this morning and he said I saw such a great line once. He said it was such a funny. It was a joke from a comedian. He said I forgot the context, but he said, "Oh, you broke a mirror. That means 7 years of bad luck, but I have a good lawyer to get you off for just 4." Anyways. So to think definitely, if you're going to do a mitzvah, let's say, and you say, oh well, a black cat crossed my path, I'm not going to go do a chesed after all. That's probably a law of D'Oraisa. But where do you draw the line? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm sure that if someone collected the Shitas in the literature and wrote it, he could bring many proofs from edge to edge, in terms of what's appropriate.
Are we talking about something happens, you fall or something, that Hashem is giving you a warning of some kind, and you should.
Yeah, but how do you interpret that message? Then you shouldn't do it after all. What you were going to do? Maybe you should. Maybe it's just testing you to overcome that Nisayon. It's very hard to know. That's why we can't solve. That's a problem. Maybe insoluble. I'm not going to solve it here. All I'm pointing out to you is this is quite an extreme case to that other side. He took the fact that he dozed for a second, spaced out, as a sign from Hashem that he actually shouldn't. He must have weighed out the fact that he's blasting a guy and decided after all that's not the right thing to do. So you see, he's taking this as a sign and changing his whole, not just a small thing in his life. He's changing course in his life in a big way. So I don't want to resolve the problem. I'm just bringing to your attention that there is a tension in the halacha between, on the one hand, being prohibited from being superstitious and letting Hashem run the world on the one hand. On the other hand, being receptive to Hashem talking to you in your life. There's a balance that needs to be addressed here. Yeah, I'm not addressing this. It's not a topic about Gemara. And it's a big topic, and I think it's, like I said, I've never done it. But I'm sure if someone went where you find whoever did collect, maybe in Mesechta Brachot, maybe we can find people who collect the shitas, you'll find a wide range of shitas. Okay? In any case, here, I'm just pointing out, just look what's happening. Picture this yourself. You're planning on doing something, and then, and I guess it's an iffy move, right? You're killing someone, essentially. So, and he says, obviously, you see from here, he saw from the fact that he dozed off, that Hashem was telling him not to do it. And then upon reflection, he sees actually that there are verses that support that it's not proper. As he says, again, we're back on wherever we are. What line is this? Yeah, what line are we on? The number? You know? Whatever it is. Wherever it is. So, the pasuk says Hashem's mercy is on all of his
37.
Third line, thank you, line 37. Hashem's mercy is on all of his creatures, let's call it, all of his works. And therefore you see that if Hashem's mercy, then like who am I to go and who are we to go and blast him? Uksiv gam enosh l'tzadik lo tov. It also says it's not right for the tzaddik to be involved in meting out punishment. Rashi says, as I'm sure you're not surprised, based on more we see not too long from now, that he should have davened for him to do tshuva. That was what was the right thing to do, not to blast them.
Brewer.
But that's exactly Bruria.
Bruria.
Bruria is the exact term there. We'll get that shortly. In any case, so that's the story here. Fine. Fine. Okay, now. Tana, one more brisa here. Tana mishmei de Rebbe Meir. B'shasha chamuz orachas, when the sun shines, meaning in the first 3 hours of the day, not sunrise. V'chol malchei mizrach u'marev manichim kitreihem b'roshehem, and all the kings of the east and west, we had that expression once before. Remember where? Yeah. Malchei mizrach u'marev. Remember we saw it?
When we comparing David to the other.
That's right. What daf is it on? What daf do we say? Kol malchei mizrach u'marev. That's right. David and Melech, Eno Chassid Ani, right? All of the kings, the east to the west, again here. Melech and Mizrach and Marev, they put Manichim Kitrusei and Berosheim, they put their crowns on their heads. Mishtachavim Lechama, and they bow down to the sun. Miyad Koes HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem gets angry. I'm not exactly 100% sure what the exact relationship of that brisa to the previous sugya. But let's say it simply, it's causal, in other words, but it gets Hashem angry every day as people doing Avodah Zarah. That, if you say that pshat, it would have implications. What if they don't? What about nowadays and so on and so forth? I don't know. Could be it's explaining. Some explain that's why it's symbolic. It's the crop of the rooster, its crown, so to speak. That is the sort of the people putting on their crowns and thinking they're bigger than Hashem. Instead of Hashem being Das Elyon, he's above them. Hard to know. Plenty of room for speculation. For speculation for Joshua. But anyways, that's what we said. Just at least let's get the flow of the piece down one more time because we're out of time for today. It's a new piece starting there at the 2 dots. Yeah, we'll stop. Let's stop here. But just so we said, the Gemara, which started saying it's not right to try to appease a person when he's angry, we learn that from Hashem, who told even Moshe Rabbeinu, wait until anger passes. And there we learn that Hashem has a hanhaga every day where he expresses ka'as, anger, for a moment, the length of a rega. We have 2 shears in a rega. One is 58,000th of an hour. One is the time it takes a rega. Maybe you can reconcile them in years to change. Maybe it's maflokus. In any case, at that moment, which occurs randomly sometime in the morning, the first 3 hours of the day, when the kings are putting on their crowns and bowing down, Hashem is angry. You can actually harness that, as Bilam did in his lifetime, would have done also against the Jews, had them not angry in those days. And also, you see Yeshua Levi wanted to use it to blast some stukia, but he found out it's not right, and therefore you should learn, you shouldn't do it either. You shouldn't use Hashem's anger to do it. So, that's it today.
Where does Ayin Hara fit into
Verse 30.
Blasting enemies.
I know with Avodah Zarah.